I'm super excited about today's message. Here's why. It's going to give you more fun, freedom, and peace. What Christian in the room wants more fun in their relationship with God? Who wants more freedom in their relationship with God? And who doesn't want more peace and less anxiety? That's what we're going to deliver today. So we're on week 2 of this series we're calling The Middleman. Now, we'll get to the fun, freedom, and peace, but please hear me out all the way through. You might disagree with me about some things. You're welcome to disagree with me, but I would challenge you to go to the text and just ask these questions that we're going to ask today. Here's what the Middleman series is about. This is what we were doing last week. The middleman does this, receives resources from God and asks God, what is the expectation that you have of me to use these resources to help other people benefit? Like, what are the expectations? And then I'm going to receive the responsibility of following God and how he wants me to use the resources he gives me. So there it is, resources, expectations, responsibility. If that doesn't make sense, you got to listen to last week's message, all right? For the purpose of finding, though, if we do this well and we embrace this role as the middleman, I honestly believe there is more fun, freedom, peace, and just even joy. Now, you're skeptical of this. I understand. So here's what I want to do this week. Ready? I'm going to actually show you a financial plan from the Bible, but don't worry. I've made it very, very simple. I had our good friends from IKEA drop an instruction manual for God's financial plan. It looks like this. This plan should only take about 9 months to understand and about 3 years to implement. Other than that, it's totally simple. This is actually the instruction manual for putting together the Barbie dream house, which takes a mechanical engineering degree to actually put together. Yeah, go on YouTube and just type in horror instruction manual Barbie dream house. You'll have endless videos. So let me actually give you my financial plan. Here it is. Because I'm simple a simple man. Let me just, there it is, 2. That's it. We can all pray and go home. 5 jars that just represents a financial plan that I stole from the Bible. If I took all of these gold pieces, and just before you rush the stage, they're not actually gold, okay? If I took all of these and I put them into one jar, that jar would be 100% full, no room for anything else. This represents 100% of what it is that God has given us with. Now, that means this, like some of you, like your 100% might be greater than someone else's 100%, and maybe your 100% is probably smaller than someone else's 100%, but this is 100% of what God has entrusted to you. This is the resource. So today we're gonna ask this, what's God's expectation about how we use this resource? So let's ask this question. Where does this plan that I'm about to share with you come from? I was reading this book. A guy by the name of Craig Hill writes this book, 5 Wealth Secrets 96% of us don't know. I was hooked at the title. I'm like, if 96% of people don't know this, I want to be part of the 4%. So I read his book. It's not long. I mean, you can read it. This is how he starts his book. He tells the story about a friend of his that has a conversation with his Jewish accountant. It goes like this. Another friend of mine, Earl Pitts, told me of an interesting conversation he had with his Jewish accountant many years ago. After discussing his taxes, Earl queried if he might ask the man a personal question. The accountant was happy to oblige him. Earl then asked, I assume that you have both Jewish and Christian clients. Am I right? Of course, answered the accountant. Tell me honestly, continued Earl, who is more prosperous? Who has larger financial statements, your Jewish clients or your Christian clients? As one might suspect, the accountant chuckled and responded, my Jewish clients, of course. Probably about 10 to 1 in magnitude. Earl then asked one more question, being Jewish yourself, what is your personal opinion as to why that is? Earl, the accountant, mused for a moment, then picked up Earl's Christian Bible, which he had with him, and said something like the following. You Christians tend to live out of the back of this book, while we Jews tend to live out of the front of the book. Unfortunately for Christians, most of the financial principles are in the front of the book. So we Jews believe in and abide by these principles, while you Christians seem to ignore them and discount them because they are, quote, Old Testament. However, I believe that the adherence to these principles is what causes people to prosper financially. I read that, I was like, oh, what's the plan in the front of the book? Because, listen, the front of the book is the Jewish Bible. But it's not that the back of the book is the Christian Bible, the whole book, Old and New Testament. It's just that Christians, we live under the covenant of the New Testament. But does that mean we totally disregard the Old Testament? So, here's where we're going to head. I want to talk to you about a financial plan from the front of the book, the Old Testament. And then we're going to do this. By the way, we're going to skim through this really fast, so grab your notes, okay? I would say this. Today, most of the Bible passages are in your notes. Grab those because I'm going to move so fast. But I would challenge you to actually check these references during the week. So we're going to give a financial plan from the front of the book, and then we're going to go to a financial plan in the back of the book. We're going to look at the Old Testament and the New Testament. Caution, though. Pump the brakes. Look at me for a moment. Particularly if you're married, and maybe you and your spouse don't see eye to eye or are equally skilled at financial things. We know that this is one of the top conflict points in marriage. When it comes to finances, when I give a message like this, it's almost like I'm handing ammunition to the one more skilled at finances, and it usually doesn't go well. So how do we talk about finances and not create a bigger problem for couples? I don't know. Let me just give you some ideas, though. Maybe it's this. Have grace for each other. That if you don't see eye to eye, ask questions instead of making statements. Give each other room to process this rather than demand change immediately. Make room for baby steps. And if that doesn't work, just recognize that we each are all products of the people who raised us. So listen, it's your parents' fault. Okay? Show grace. So here it is. The financial plan from the front of the book, the Old Testament, starts with this. Starts with this right here. This jar represents what's called a tithe. Tithe literally means 10%. It's intentionally the first jar because of what it says in Proverbs 3:9-10. Listen to the blessing that comes from obedience. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits, not the last fruits, not the leftover. The first fruits of all your crops, then your barns will be filled to overflowing and your vats will brim over with new wine. The first 10% doesn't actually belong to us. Listen to Leviticus 27:30. A tithe of everything from the land, whether grain, soil, fruit of the trees, it goes on to talk about herds, belongs to the Lord. It is holy to the Lord. It's not ours. He's like, listen, all of this is 100% of what it is I'm going to give you. By the way, these 4 jars are yours. That one's mine. This is what this says. So step 1 is this. Give 10% back to God and do it first, not last. Out of all the things I'm about to tell you in these 5 steps, this is the one that's absolutely clear from, well, the front of the book. You want to know what's interesting, though? 10% is actually only part of the picture. 10%, actually a tithe, happened at 3 different times. The first tithe supported the priests and the Levites, those who were running kind of the temple. The second tithe supported a sacred festival. So there were 2 tithes during the year. And then there's this third tithe for orphans and widows and the poor. It took place once every 3 years. So do the math, once every 3 years. So they would give away 10% plus 10% plus 3.33. So 23.33% annually is what they gave, okay? Just hang on to that for a year. It's not actually 10%, it was 23.33%. So question, how serious do you think God was about that command of tithing? Was it a light suggestion? Or a, hey, if you want to? Or is it a command? Listen to this. In the book of Malachi, we find that the people of God are like, I don't think God was serious about that. So they're like, they just stopped tithing. Well, Malachi, this prophet of God, is given a message from God, and this is what it says. Will a mere mortal rob God? Yet you rob me, but you ask, how are you robbing me? The answer comes from God. In tithes and offerings, you are under a curse, your whole nation, because you are robbing me. Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Then he says this, test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven, here's the blessing, and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it. All right, I'm gonna give you 3 points that I think God is saying. It's in your notes. Here it is. The tithe was not optional. Why do I think that? Because God attaches a felony to it. He's like, listen, you can do this or not do this, but if you don't do this, and he says it again and again and again, you're a thief. He says you're robbing. Now, I don't know if it's actually a misdemeanor or a felony, but whatever it is, if we don't do this, like we have a criminal record. This is God's point of view here. The second is this, the tithe was actually the key to the blessing. The third is that the tithe was actually a test, and you think like, oh, God's testing us. And that's not actually what it says. He says this, test God in this. Do this and see if he won't be with you and be faithful to you and help you. So that's the tithe. But notice as I read that, it didn't say tithe. What did it say? In verse 8, how are we robbing you? In tithes and offerings, which brings us to our second jar. This one right here. See, the expectation was not just a 10% tithe. That was the baseline. There's this offering, and it would be called a free will offering. And I'm gonna say this, I'm just gonna put 3% on it. There's actually no number in the Bible. They would call it a free will offering. So as God inspired your heart to give to causes, give to causes. I'm going to give you an example. Exodus 35. God tells the Israelites to build this tabernacle, this big tent kind of building. And this is the place where God would come and meet with people. So that they had a building, a structure that they traveled with. This tabernacle was actually portable, that they would know that God was with them because God promised his presence as a part of this tabernacle. So Moses says this, just bring stuff. Bring a free will offering. People brought jewels, gold, bronze, silver. They would bring yarn and materials. And then there were these craftsmen. It says this, that God gave skills and gifts and abilities for these craftsmen in wood, in metal, in sewing. And they used all of their talents along with the treasures that the people brought to build this tabernacle. This is how it reads. Exodus 35:29. All the Israelite men and women whose hearts made them willing. That's a key phrase. And 4 or 5 times, if I read to you the whole story, which we just don't have time for, if I read to you the whole story, you would hear this again and again. Their hearts were stirred. Like there was something in them that just prompted them to do this. No one demanded it of them, but their hearts were made willing to bring anything for the work that the Lord had commanded by Moses to be done. And they brought it as a free will offering to the Lord. So people start bringing stuff. And then in the next chapter, it says this, the people are bringing much more than enough for doing the work that the Lord has commanded to do. So Moses is like, hey, thank you so much for your generosity, but please stop. We can't handle, we need to cut off the free will offering. Please don't bring any more. We have way more than we need. Can you imagine pastor getting up on Sunday morning? Listen, we usually take offering at this time, but you know, you're giving so much, we just need to stop. Yeah, I haven't been to that church either. I do want to point this out though. What is this offering for? It's for whatever need arises in the community. And apparently at that time, God is like, listen, you need a place where you can come and meet with me. So let me just give you some examples. There's a hurricane that blows through a community and people have a financial need. There's a team that's going to travel to Peru to help transform a village to ease poverty. There's people in your neighborhood who are experiencing tragedy. They could use financial help, and you're like, oh, let's give to that. But if it doesn't have its own jar, and we just take it all from one jar, you can't give what you don't have. Are you with me? By the way, these jars, you don't actually have to have glass jars at your house. I mean, man, if I come over for dinner to your house, and I'm like, oh, glass jars filled with money, weird. These just represent your bank account. That maybe you have different accounts within your bank account that are separated into, well, giving that away, first and foremost, and then an offering to say, God, whenever you bring something my way, I would love to be able to contribute. But if we don't have it, how do you give it? My wife and I, when we first started doing this kind of financial planning early on, we literally had paper envelopes. I know that's not safe. You're like going to Safeway with paper envelopes of cash, right? You're like, we don't do it that way anymore. But these are symbolic of you setting aside money for different purposes. In the front of the book, there was a place where they said, make an offering to God. So again, I'm just putting 3% right there. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's 1, 2, maybe it's 12% for you, whatever it might be. Third jar, it's called savings. It might be 3% or 15% or 20%. I just threw 3% in here, okay? So from the time you start earning an income, you just take 3%, you put it in there. Proverbs 21:20. The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down. What does that mean? It's not complicated. Wise people save and fools consume everything that they have. So we have to ask ourselves, what is savings for? I'm going to paraphrase Proverbs 6:6. It says something like this. The ant for a brain has something smaller than a pinpoint, but it knows that when the harvest is there, you need to save some and store up because there's going to come a season of scarcity. There's going to come a season where there's less. Man, the ant is smart enough to do that. Shouldn't we be wise too? Go ahead, Proverbs 6:6-11, write it down. You can read that on your own. I didn't throw that in your notes. The point is this: we save in seasons of abundance. We save in the normal seasons so that we might have margin for the lean years or emergencies. Margin means we don't have to panic when the car breaks down, right? This is savings. Let me point something else out though. Maybe our savings isn't always just for us. Proverbs 22:9 says, the generous will themselves be blessed, for they share their food with the poor. I wonder if we're able to build this up and build this up and build this up, if there might come an opportunity to say, I need more for the offering because there's something. I'm not giving it to church, but this is going to someone who is in need. And yet we've saved in such a way that now we can actually resource the fun part of money. What's the fun part of money? Giving it to somebody. Have you ever given someone money? Not like your kids came to you and said, I wrecked the car, I need you to buy me a new car. I'll tell you what the answer to that is, no. But when someone genuinely, you see someone who has a need, because catastrophe hits them, and you're able to resource them. The most fun I've ever had with money is giving to a great cause or giving to someone in need. Which brings us to the fourth one, investment. I'm just going to say 4%. I could use the exact same verses for investment that we used in savings. And by the way, I told you I'm skimming through this really quick. But the only difference is the intent of these funds. Savings is meant to be added slowly. Investing might be a little greater risk, but it's designed to multiply, not add. The front of the book, Old Testament, gives us this advice, but dishonest money dwindles away. Don't worry about that. We get that. But whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. I'm going to suggest this. There are multiple places in the New Testament and the Old Testament, the back of the book, the front of the book, that talk about this expectation that when God gives you a resource, that we make it grow. Now, I said this last week. I'll say it again this week. I might say it every week. Every scripture in the Bible where Jesus mentions money isn't always about money. He gives something, a resource to a steward, and the expectation is that he would gain more, that it would grow. There's some of those stories that are actually about the kingdom of God or the gospel. I'm giving you the truth of the gospel. The expectation is that you would share it with others so the gospel would spread and grow and people would come to know who Jesus is, okay? But there's plenty of stories about money, and the expectation is that it would be multiplied. There's some people, we looked at this last week in Luke 19, some people are good at adding to their money. Fantastic. There's other people who are good at multiplying. Who gets rewarded more? The investors. Those who invest for the future. Which brings us to this. This big old jar that has 80% after all of these are given. Here's what this is for. Go enjoy it. Do whatever you want with it. Like, have fun. It's the greatest percentage. I mean, think about this. Like if I was like, hey, I got a gift for you. Which one do you want? God's like, this is for you. Have fun. What kind of God would that be called? A generous God. The funny thing is he just says, it's all for you. By the way, one's kind of a test, though, to see if you actually trust me with all of it. We know this about human nature, which is so interesting. Whenever this all goes up, what jar goes up first? Come on. With the raise you got at work, what usually comes is an increase in lifestyle. I get it. I mean, before it was like, I don't need that. I can't imagine myself buying that because I can't afford that. But then you're like, oh, I can afford that now. As long as we start here, and then go here, and then go here, and then go here, and we don't start here. There is a financial dream killer, and I want to be very clear about what it is because the front of the book, the Old Testament, is very clear about what it is. Here it is. It's debt. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring it up, but I did mean to bring it up because it's a dream killer. It's a financial dream killer. Proverbs 22:7 says this, the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower, the person in debt, becomes slave to the lender. When we owe people or companies money, we are slaves to a master, is what it says. It is interesting that there is a debt service company that refers to themselves as MasterCard. Think about it for a minute, because they are the master of everyone who carries that card. A couple truths for you. Number one, debt makes you poor. I know there's going to be some of you like, no, it doesn't. No, it's not true. No. There's some acceptable debt, right? Debt for something that appreciates, like a home. Yeah. Debt for education so that it enables you to have a greater income. Fantastic. But that's not the debt that we're really talking about. We're talking about when you pay for something and you pay more money than it's actually worth, and the minute you drive it off the lot, it depreciates. That's just one of them, right? Here's the second truth. First is debt will make you poor. The second is this. We actually have choices. I know we don't think we have choices, but I'm just going to say this. We have choices about what we do with this. And sometimes it reveals, well, Jesus said it this way. Whatever goes on with your treasure, it reveals what's in your heart. Well, whatever happens with your treasure, wherever it goes, it reveals what you love and what you prioritize. So can we do this real quick? I'm going to switch from a financial plan from the front of the book to a financial plan to the back of the book. And I'm going to try not to run out of time or go over too much. Number one, here it is. The financial plan starts with this. This is Jesus, and this is the New Testament, not the Old Testament. This was the Jewish plan. Let me show you the Christian plan. Here it is. It starts with a tithe. It starts with 10%. Jesus is having an argument with some of these Jewish teachers of the law. Matthew 23, listen to this. Woe to you, this is Jesus speaking. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. Not a great way to start, right? You give 1/10 of your spices. You tithe your spices, mint, dill, and cumin. But you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter. You should have done mercy, justice, and faithfulness without neglecting the former, the tithe. Jesus affirms tithing, not as the ceiling, but as the baseline. Jesus was saying this, justice, you don't care about people when they're facing injustice. By the way, what does it usually require when someone's facing injustice? Maybe it's kindness, maybe it's goodness, maybe it's a relationship, but sometimes justice requires something out of an offering. Mercy, how do you help your neighbor in need? Faithfulness, it's being faithful to God and asking him, God, what are your expectations about how I serve people? The second jar in the New Testament is known as, well, the offering jar. And I don't have a percentage on it. I can't tell you what it means, but I think it's this: Christians resourced people in need. I get this from Acts chapter 4. It's all over the place in the New Testament. You can check this out. But Acts 4:33 reads this way: with great power, the apostles continued to testify to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus. And God's grace was so powerfully at work in them all. Listen. It was God's grace. They're like, oh my gosh, God has changed my life. Jesus died on the cross for me. We witnessed the resurrection. We've got to be a part of all of this. And it said this, the grace was so powerful at work in them all that there was no needy persons among them. God's been so good to us. We're going to help those in need. Listen to the next verse. For from time to time, those who owned land or houses sold them, brought the money from the sales, and put it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to anyone who had need. Now, is that normative? Are we saying, okay, everybody, go sell your house? No, there was a need in Jerusalem that was specific to them. But they said, you know what, this isn't a tithe. We're just going to offer up what it is that we have to help. What if we set it aside so that we had it ahead of time? Just a thought. Number 3, savings. We live in a tension between saving and hoarding. This is probably more common for Jesus to talk about than anything else. Listen to this. In 1 Timothy 6:8, Paul writes this, command those who are rich to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. Okay, so if you have a lot of money, do good deeds. That doesn't have to be financial. But then it says to be generous and willing to share. Like, yeah. I mean, that's what it is. So there's this, we have this saving so that we can help people. But last week, listen, we looked at Luke 19, which is about 10 servants who received resources from the king, knowing the king that expected them to gain more. There is an expectation that we manage God's resources so that there's more than when we started. But, okay, that's the, hey, earn more, hey, save. But we also have this warning from Jesus in Matthew 6. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth. Wait. Jesus, you just rewarded the guy who multiplied what you gave him. That means he was saving it, he was investing it. But now you're telling me, do not store up yourselves treasures on earth where moth and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Well, how do I do that? Well, it's by using your resources for good. And then it says this, you cannot serve both God and money. And you're like, wait. The servant, he was rewarded for doing multiplication with the resources. But now you're like, oh, wait, you can't serve both God and money? No, you can't serve both God and money, but you can serve God with your money. I was trying to make sense out of hoarding. And there's a guy by the name of Randy Alcorn in his book, Money, Possessions, and Eternity. This is what he writes. Hoarding is replacing God or replacing our need for God. Hoarding is a self-absorbed commitment to independence. In my words, independence from God. I don't need God, I got money. Or independence from others who could help us if we were in need, or just as we can help them and we can help others. He goes on to say, the difference between saving and hoarding isn't simply the amount, but the attitude. Nevertheless, this is great, don't miss this. There's a vast difference between saving $500 or a few $1,000s for a rainy day and saving $250,000 that could last a rainy decade. Some lay up enough to survive a stormy century. In seeking to provide for our future needs, we should not neglect those who are currently needy. Our plenty will supply what they need. Now, this feels sticky. You're like, well, what about retirement? I don't think he's actually talking about retirement here because Randy Alcorn would say this, you better save for retirement because your kids don't want you to hit that certain age, whatever that certain age is, and they're like, you go to them like, hey, we're moving in. And if you want to do that, they want you to do that, fantastic. But I'm just saying, you don't want to be dependent on your kids, so invest. Have a retirement plan, and hope is not a retirement plan. Question, how can we store up treasure in heaven by investing in God's kingdom unless we save it right now to contribute to God's kingdom? See, I don't think he was talking about your retirement investment. I think it's, what are we saving right now that's liquid? Can I just make a recommendation? Have at least 3-4 months expenses on hand, liquid. Maybe 6 months, I don't know. But beyond your retirement, do you need 10 years? Just cash on hand? Or might God go, listen, there's people in your life that I want you to use that for. And maybe this jar of saving or this jar of investing, maybe God is saying, I have a cause I'm going to bring your way. So I'll say this. Number 4, investing. You can't serve God and money, but you certainly can serve God with your money. He gives us this in 1 Timothy 6. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Not money itself. Money is not evil. Money's neutral. But the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with their grief. I think it's what drives us that separates the two. Is it just, I don't trust God? I just trust the man I look at in the mirror or the woman I see in the mirror, and I just got to save because something bad's going to happen, and you live out of anxiety and fear? It's not God's plan for you. His plan is fun. His plan is freedom. And his plan is financial peace. I got to keep moving through this. Spending. I'm going to say it this way. Christians need God-sized dreams. You know, I'm not going to teach through this. I'm just going to tell you this. Paul references the arrogant rich person. Not just because they're rich, but the arrogant rich person that says, I don't need God. You see, because all my dreams, I can actually accomplish them because of the money I have. Listen, if you can do everything in your life because of the money that you have, your dreams are too small. To some degree, there's such a blessing to go, I prayed about this and I watched God show up and show off and help. If God's blessed you with a ton of resources, then I hope you have a bigger dream. So I need to get to the very end of this. So let me just ask this. How's the New Testament church doing? I want to take a look at what the Israelites gave and what the church, the Christians in the United States give. And here it is. Here's the next slide. Under the law of the Israelites, the plan from the front of the book, they gave about 23%. Under grace, meaning, oh, there's grace, don't follow the law. Christians, like today, we give about 2.5%. These are Christians. It's not the world. These are Christians, 2.5%. By the way, during the Great Depression, the average financial gift was 3.3% of their annual income. That's humbling. Okay, here's a survey from Barna Research. Do people understand the tithe? If you look at, it's the third line down, all Christians that goes across there. First of all, by the way, 99% of pastors understand the tithe. I don't know who the other 1% are. But the third line down, all Christians, 43% know about the tithe and they can explain it. 22% say that they know what a tithe is, but they can't explain it. 36% have no idea what a tithe means, all right? Here's what's awesome. In this room, 100% of you now get it. It's this right here, all right? Next one, the U.S. Christians' annual giving. If you look in just the left-hand column right here, 21% people are tithers or greater. They give more than 10% or greater. That stat, I think, is actually really high. 9%, they set their giving at less than 10%, but they're consistent in giving. 8% give less than 10%, but it just varies. The greatest number here, 37%, they have no plan and they don't really know what they give. It's all over the place. 25% of Christians, not just U.S. people, but Christians, they don't give anything. Number 4, how much do tithers actually give? So people who give at least 10%, here it is. It's fantastic. 23% give exactly 10%. 54% of tithers give between 11 and 15%. 14% give between 16 and 20%. And 9% of tithers, they actually give 20% or more of their income. I'm just saying, I think the model for this is the starting place. And we want to see this go down so that we live under our means so that these other ones can go up. I know people who are committed to this and they'll be like, hey, I'm going to try and raise my giving 1% every year. It's challenging. Number 5, when did tithers learn tithing? This is so fascinating. When did they learn? 29% when they were children or teens. In their 20s, that's the greatest number, 35%. In their 30s, 19%. By the way, I think we're up to like 80%, over 80%. So if you're in your 40s or older, like whatever, good luck. It really proves the statement of like, I guess when it comes to tithing, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, whatever. Okay. Was that mean? No, I think it was. 6, how frequent do people give? 2 slides here. This is so fascinating. 5% of Christians give weekly. 18% of Christians give monthly. And then yearly or intermittently, 77%. Okay, just keep that in your mind. Go to the next slide. How does frequency affect volume? The 5% givers, they actually give 20% of the total volume of giving in a church. 18% of those monthly givers, they give over 50% of the volume. So if you combine those together, 23% of all givers give about 70% of the volume. And 70% of the givers give only 30%. Remember like the 80-20 rule? Like 80% of the work gets done by 20% of the people. This is like 70% of the giving is given by, 23% of the people? And it's actually directly correlated to how often they give. Let's keep going. This is fun, isn't it? Do people in larger churches give more? That's a fantastic question. The answer is no. Churches of 50 people, on average, they give $2,589 per person a year. Churches of 5,000 people or more, on average, they give $2,340. It literally is directly proportional. I could go to churches of 100, 500, 1,000, and the larger the church is, the smaller number that people give. This is my favorite slide out of all of them, number line. It's just this, does tithing work? Okay, does it, we're like, well, what do you mean does it work? Okay, Christian tithers in green, Christian non-tithers on the right. How many Christian tithers are debt-free? 28%. 13% though of Christian non-tithers. Owe on a mortgage, 52%. That means 48, they've paid off their mortgage. This is just the homeowner. 66% though owe on a mortgage for non-tithers. Are making car payments. Oh, the tithers, 26%. 38% though of non-tithers. Credit card bills owed more than 30 days out. It's not like you pay it off every month. For tithers, only 20%. This is actually the greatest gap. Twice as many non-tithers are in financial debt that they're not paying their bills off every month. Have debts of $2,500 to $50,000, 36% to 41%. They have debts over $50,000, 15% to 25%. They have estates, this is where it flip-flops here. They have estates or assets greater than $250,000, 58% of tithers, and only 46% of non-tithers. They donate to 5+ places, 5 or more places, 52% of tithers do, and 37% of non-tithers. They have a will or an estate plan, 71% of Christian tithers, and 51% of non-tithers. Does tithing work? Everything about the statistics says this. They're more blessed. They're financially in a better state. They're having more fun. They're having more freedom. And they're having more peace. You may be thinking this right now. Hang with me, I'm almost done. You may be thinking, you know what, tithers, they're just actually people with more money. Right? That's what you're thinking, right? Like you prove this whole thing, you're like, listen, I don't tithe because I don't have, but if I did have, I would tithe. Every statistic in the world that measures that says that's not true. The more money you have, the less people tithe. Isn't that crazy? Think about it. If you have $1 million and you write a check for $100,000, there's 10%. But if you have $100,000 and you write a check for $10,000, which one, when you look at it, feels weightier, right? The $100,000. I can't part with that. And yet it's directly proportional to what God's blessed you with. All those stats about giving, they're just stats of the average church in the United States. But you know what is so great? You know what I love? I'm really grateful that I don't have to pastor an average church. Because could you imagine how crazy frustrating it would be as the pastor if 23% of the people gave 70% of the income. Could you imagine being in a church where you were the tither, where you gave 10% or more, and you're looking around and you're like, no, I'm like one of the 23%, and I'm giving 70%. Like, I feel like we're in a rowboat with 100 people, and 23 of them are rowing. And there's a group just kind of like kicking it. Like, can you imagine? But I'm so glad that I don't have to pastor an average church. I'm so glad that humility runs through this church, where people are asking the question, how can I be the middleman? How can I be the middle woman who looks at the resources God gives them and then asks, God, what's the financial plan you want me to run with? Because interestingly enough, the front of the book and the back of the book tend to agree a lot. This number is absolutely clear in the front and the back of the book. These, offering, definitely there's something there. Savings and investing. Man, it's whatever percentage you want to pick, ask God. Enjoy this. I guess I would finish with this one question. What's your plan? What is your financial plan? I know most of us, our financial plan is, I'm trying to survive. There ain't no fun in that. There's no peace in that. And so I want to invite you. Would you create a financial plan? Now listen, if you're like, listen, I get the plan, but if you knew where I was at today, I don't know how to get there. We have some people in our church who are pretty smart at this. And it will require humility on your part to say, hey, I could use some help. They will come alongside you and they will help you. They're not going to come start doling out dollar bills to you. Let's be clear. They're going to start doling out wisdom, and they're going to love you and walk with you and help you. Now listen, if you're really good at this and you're living this out, not you're good at it here, but you're actually good at living this thing out, and you want to be one of those people who helps other people, you come talk to me. And once we vet you, then we'll let you help other people, all right? Because some of you are good at this. And some of us, we struggle at this. I just want to know, what's your plan? And together, let's not be an average church. It only happens when we agree. I'm going to be the middleman between God's blessing and using it how he expects. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for this wonderful church and their unbelievable generosity to me this morning by letting me lay this out. Lord, if anyone in the room is offended by this, I pray peace on them. I pray just a generous dose of your grace, that I really am not being sarcastic at all, Lord, when I do believe that there is fun, there's freedom, and there is peace in this. So God, would you help us to be diligent? Lord, this is not easy to accomplish, but would you give us your grace and your goodness that we can live this out, and that we wouldn't measure ourselves against everybody else in the average, but we'd measure ourselves against your word, and we'd walk into truth. Help us to be humble enough to admit when we don't get it right. And maybe today in this room, Lord, there's some that just need to ask for forgiveness, and it's a confession moment. Maybe there's a request, God, how do you want me to use what you've given me? Not just on myself, but for your kingdom. Lord, would you speak? May we listen, and may we obey, because in obedience is blessing. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Everybody said.